What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about current news in Norway. Because as an American, I never get to see Norwegian news here in the United States from any of our news or media outlets. So today, I'd like to take some time to learn about the current news and events happening in Norway right now. Starting with NATO launches new Nordic response. What is this? NATO, some kind of, is this like a military operation happening in the Nordic region? I have not heard about this. They're part of the largest NATO military exercise since 1952. Is this happening in Norway right now? And the first with new Nordic members. More than 20,000 soldiers from 13 countries are taking part in northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland alone, as hopes rise that ongoing military expansion in the region will also boost the hard-pressed local economy. So what exactly is happening right now in northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland? Look at this. NATO forces like this from Germany. Oh, this is from Germany. So there's just NATO military forces, like right now, in the northern Nordic region. They will be highly visible the next few weeks around Troms and Finnmark in northern Norway. Military exercises are underway all over the Nordic region after Finland and Sweden joined NATO. So there's just, these are military exercises. Okay. Okay, I was wondering, like, did something happen? Like, something, like, big happen? Like, is there a conflict going on? Obviously, there are, like, conflicts going on right now. But I meant, like, right now, today. And, no, this is just a military exercise for NATO. Because of the recent expansion of NATO, bringing Finland and Sweden into the alliance, it's taken on new meaning since Russia invaded Ukraine 2 years ago. Right, it does take on a different meaning in a way, because it's happening right now. Finland and Sweden joining now, it's like they are also very close to this conflict, very close to Russia. So it does have that meaning. It's become more important to protect and defend NATO's so-called northern flank and its new, much longer border to Russia. Oh, so if you consider NATO, like all the countries that are part of NATO, if you include Norway, Finland, and Sweden, now NATO countries really border a lot of Russia. I see. That's very, very significant. Right, right. The so-called Nordic response exercises. Okay, these are exercises. Okay, running until March 14th are a new version of the cold response exercises that have taken place every other year. Oh, this is a normal military exercise for NATO that happens. It's just a little different this year. They're also part of NATO's record-large exercise this year called Steadfast Defender, with 70,000 participants training this winter in a so-called belt from Germany, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. Wow. The training in Norway itself will mostly be taking place from Jurkvik and Inner Troms in the west to Alta and Mid-Finnmark in the northeast. It involves 100 fighter jets, transport flights, surveillance flights, helicopters, thousands of soldiers practicing to protect Nordic territory. This is practice. Wow. Okay. When I just read, like, NATO launching Nordic response, I was like, oh, response to what? What? Huh? Huh? Response to what? What happened? And there's stuff happening, but this is, at its core, this is a military exercise. Okay. Very good. Very good. For NATO? Cool, cool. That makes sense. That makes sense. Questions fly around King's Holiday. King's Holiday, we're talking about King Harald of Norway, I assume. Norway's ailing monarch, King Harald V, finally arrived back in Oslo Sunday night after health problems spoiled what was supposed to be a private holiday half a world away. Right, it seems like I am reading more and more. Whenever I check on Norwegian news, there seems to be something about King Harold. I guess his health is, he is pretty old, and he's had some health scares at this point, and it's starting to show up in the news a little more often from what I've noticed. It ended up as a very public matter, yeah, with the botched trip costing taxpayers 2 million NOK. Oh, yes, the tax, that is, still raising questions after nearly a week of intense media coverage. So King Harold is finally back in Oslo? Yes. He is just back in Oslo a couple of nights ago. Detailed answers have been hard to get. I guess people are really asking questions about King Harold's health and aren't getting definitive straight answers, huh? With the royal palace issuing a few one or two press releases, King Harold, who had turned 87, wow, just a week earlier, had been hospitalized with an unspecified infection while in Malaysia. Unspecified infection, okay. Military officials mobilized to arrange for Harold's trip home. Okay. Is there anything else here? Because it sounds like the people taking care of the king aren't really talking much about details of what's wrong, or if he's okay, or how serious this is. So King Harold likes traveling, but then things went wrong for King Harold, who's been in and out of hospital in Oslo for health problems for years. Okay, so he's been having health problems. Like he is in his 80s. That's normal. Okay, that's very yeah, and that's sad, obviously, to hear about King Harold having health problems. I know he's very well liked. I've learned about his life a little bit. He's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. He's done the rowing, like professionally, right? Like sailing, like professionally, and very successfully, and a lot of other cool stuff. He's very down to earth. Yeah, that's sad that he's having health problems. I hope that has a positive outcome. What else do we have here? Parliament scolds its own members. Okay, Norwegian Parliament scolding, yelling at its own members for what? What are we yelling about? What are we scolding for? The Norwegian Parliament's disciplinary committee handed out its toughest possible criticism on Wednesday against several fellow and former top politicians. So the Norwegian Parliament is handing out the toughest criticism to Norwegian politicians. Why? What's the criticism about? After they've all landed in various conflicts of interest. Really? Former Prime Minister Erna Solberg of the Conservatives received the most severe criticism, threatening her plans to win back the government in her next election. Okay. Right, I know that Norway, some of the politicians in Norway, I've seen here and there, whenever I take a look at Norwegian news, um, like the Norwegian politicians who are like doing insider trading, and doing weird things with budgets. Also, there's been like a couple scandals, from what I can tell. The committee unanimously and across party lines determined that it was strongly critical of Solberg's failure to halt or question her husband's stock trading activity. Yeah, honestly, this stuff happens here in the United States as well, all the time, all the time. Yeah, like the politicians in the United States are not banned from stock trading. Like politicians in the United States get rich off trading stocks and literally making policies about the companies they're trading. It's pretty crazy. So Solberg got the strongest possible reaction. Right, this is kind of old news though. Are there others who have gotten criticized? The committee criticized both Solberg's government and the current Labour Centre government led by Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre over poor routines for handling cases involving conflicts of interest. So the Norwegian government all around has poor processes, bad processes for handling conflicts of interest. Interesting. This is totally not something that people really understand has happened in Norway. I was pretty shocked to hear this because whenever, like, us Americans and I think people around the world hear about Norway, it's just about how amazing Norway is, how great Norway is, and how its policies are amazing and it's rich and beautiful, and those things are all true. But we rarely hear about this kind of thing, which is one reason I enjoy looking at Norwegian news. I get some of these stories that I never would have otherwise gotten, insights into Norway that people, Americans, have no idea about. So that's unfortunate, but it's I guess it's good that these Norwegian politicians got a good scolding. That's good. Okay. Norway greets new Nordic defense. Okay, so this is talking about the NATO um, military exercises going on. Yes, yes. Welcoming Sweden into the defense this week, into the alliance, NATO. Now all Nordic countries are NATO members. I did not realize that. I would think that would be bigger news here in the United States. I thought that should be much bigger news. I did not know that now all of the Nordic countries are part of NATO. I did not know that. That's very cool. And as I've read, that's really one very real, like, tangible product of that is that now there's a lot of NATO countries bordering Russia, which is interesting. And I'm sure that's a strategic decision. And they're waving at the boat. Yes, and they're taking part in winter exercises in northern Norway. Yeah, okay. Swedish and Norwegian prime ministers dubbed Sweden's entry into NATO this week historic. Wow, that was this week. Wow. Yeah, that's huge news. Like, wow. Okay. Very cool. What else do we have here? There's some pretty big news this week. Norway rallies for Ukraine. Yes, I have. There's been a lot of articles that I've seen whenever I do read about Norwegian news here that talk about Norway's amazing support for Ukraine. Amazing support. Thousands of Norwegians and Ukrainian refugees took to the streets all over the country on Saturday. Wow, 2 years after Russia invaded its neighbor and set off a war that threatens all of Europe. Yeah, no kidding. Man, 2 years. It's been 2 years of war. Again, us Americans, we're so disconnected from Europe, Ukraine, and like all of that, and the Russia-Ukraine war. It's not something that gets talked about very much here in America anymore. A lot of Americans support Ukraine, and America has sent a lot of aid to Ukraine, which I'm happy for. But it doesn't get talked about as much as it seems to in Norway. And I think it's because Norway and other countries in Europe are much closer, like literally right there. And us Americans, we're very far away. So it's not as real for us. So I enjoy reading about this and how serious Norway takes this. It's very nice. Ukraine's fight is our fight, declared the newly elected head of Oslo's city government, adding that Ukrainians are fighting for all of Europe's freedom. Yeah, that's an aspect I didn't really appreciate. Is that it feels like Norway and other parts of Europe really do feel like Ukraine winning against Russia is important for all of Europe, which is something I didn't realize. I didn't realize that as an American. So that's another reason I really enjoy learning about this, getting those insights into how Norwegians actually feel about this. And it affects Norway and other European countries like immediately, in a very, very real way. Whereas the United States, we're thousands of miles away. So I enjoy reading about this from the Norwegian perspective. What else do we have here? Drammen fends off racist claims. Again, stuff that I would never imagine hearing about in Norway. With Norway's amazing image. Is racist claims? What is this? Engaged residents of Drammen, especially the leader of its youth council, blame their own city politicians for stirring up claims that their culturally diverse city southwest of Oslo has become racist. Everyone who lives here knows that Drammen is not a racist city. How did this start? How did somebody politicians have been saying that the city of Drammen is racist? I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about this. Huh. Debate has continued to fly, also on social media, as lots of young multicultural residents of Drammen felt offended and angry. So there's people calling Drammen racist, but then there's lots of multicultural people in Drammen who are offended, saying, no, I'm literally like from a multicultural background and it's not racist here where I live. Is that basically what's going on? It's all about trying to clean up the mess they've made because we've been branded as a racist city. But everyone who lives in Drammen knows Drammen is not a racist city. How did this even start? What? This is... Man. This is interesting. I don't know if I'm going to get all the details on that. That seems very random to me. Like, who even started this accusation? Okay, let's keep going. Oh, here we go again. Everyday racism common in Norway. Is this about it? Is this gonna answer some of my questions? New survey indicated that more than half of all Norwegians think everyday racism, characterized by derogatory ethnic-related remarks, is widespread in Norway. Again, this is totally not something like, what? I have not heard about this. This is not something that Americans think about Norway. This is more about what Norwegians think about Norway. Norwegians, more than half of Norwegians think that there's racist activity in Norway. Derogatory remarks. That shows how racism remains a problem, but also more Norwegians are aware of it. Obviously, America has had a long history here of battling racism, and still to this day. So I can kind of relate to this. This is all based on a survey conducted nationwide. Found that 40% of those questioned think everyday racism is widespread. 6% think racism is very widespread. Wow. Racism against non-Norwegians? Like people living in Norway who come from another country or ethnic background? Is that what we're talking about? Being racist against foreigners in Norway? Is this true? Norway has become much more culturally diverse in recent decades, and that's viewed as positive. Yes, yes. But ugly examples of racism, discrimination, and exploitation of minorities persist. But the public is conscious of it. Wow, I mean, it feels like no matter where you are in the world, some form of racism will exist. So, I mean, if this is something that's happening in Norway, it's nice to see that Norwegians are aware of it and want to change this. I didn't even know this was a problem. This is something you have to, I think you have to be living in Norway to even relate to this at all. Interesting to read about, though. Very interesting to read about. Holy cow. Drammen accused of refugee racism. Here it is again. So they accused Drammen of being racist towards refugees? Is it because they don't want to accept refugees? Is that what it is? Norway called in Russia's ambassador? Okay. What else do we have? Norway's government summoned Russia's ambassador to Norway, and they wanted to have a conversation after the death of Alexei Navalny. I think I read about this a little bit last week. Norway wanted to let Russia know how much they disapprove of that, of Navalny's death. Yes. Wow. This got a little crazy. Oh my god, this week had some pretty crazy topics, very interesting topics. Really giving some deep insights into some of the things Norway is struggling with. From military exercises, which are good, the king having health problems, Norway's parliament yelling at its members for conflicts of interest, um, Norway supporting Ukraine, that's nice. Racist claims in Norway? Yeah. Wow. Really interesting stuff, and all stuff that you do not hear about Norway here in America. You never hear about this. This is all brand new to me. So this was very, very interesting. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I feel more informed. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on any of these news topics about Norway here today. That'd be great. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Norway and Norwegian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.